Hi, this is Jen Rubin, editor-in-chief of the Contrarian. We're thrilled to have back with us Representative Jason Crow from Colorado. Welcome, Congressman.
Thanks, Jen. Good to be back with you.
Well, it's always about something, isn't it? And in this case, it unfortunately draws upon your background as a captain and Army Ranger who had several tours of duty. And we're now confronted with a report from the Washington Post. It's just a report at this point that the striking of the vessel on September 2nd was given under alleged orders from the secretary to kill them all, and that a second strike was launched to, in essence, sink the remainder of the boat and kill those who had survived. What was your reaction when you read the report, and can you tell us anything else that you've garnered since that report came out to help inform you as to what really happened?
Yeah, well, it turns out that appointing an incompetent, reckless uh, individual with no relevant experience to run our nation's largest, most consequential national security department is not a good idea. Which, of course, we knew at the beginning of the year, which is why I called for his nomination to be withdrawn, and I called for my Senate colleagues to not confirm Pete Hegseth because we knew there's just no other way to look at this. We knew that bad things would happen. Yeah, based on what Hegseth has said, based upon what he has done, based upon his recklessness and his comfort with lawlessness. So that was my first thought. My second was the terrible position that this administration and Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump continue to put our service members in, right? They are putting them in morally untenable and unlawful situations, or a position where they might have to carry out unlawful orders, which is exactly why I and several of my colleagues put out a video a couple of weeks ago reminding them of their legal obligations, of their fidelity to the Constitution, and that they have not just a right, but a duty to ensure they are following the law in fulfilling their oath under the Constitution.
When you made that video, you presumably didn't know about the second strike. Had you had in mind the Venezuelan operation, or was it a more generic concern that brought you to make that video with your colleagues?
The video was based on this long pattern of lawlessness and recklessness that we see with the administration. And it ties into statements that Donald Trump himself has made about shooting protesters in Lafayette Square, to which, Chairman Mark Milley and Defense Secretary at the time, Mark Esper, rejected and told him he could not do. Comments about deploying troops to polling stations in the United States, which would be a violation of U.S. criminal law. Him talking about napalming and going to war with the city of Chicago, him talking about killing the family members of terrorists, which would be murder and a violation of the law of armed conflict in the Geneva Conventions. And now we see what's playing out in the Caribbean as well. So there is a long pattern of
Yes.
recklessness and disdain for the law and the Constitution that deeply troubles me and has created an atmosphere that is having an impact on our military. So we wanted to make sure we were putting out the counter narrative that no, you don't have to do things that are illegal, that are unlawful, that are a violation of the Constitution. In fact, it's your obligation not to, right? And obviously, you follow lawful commands in the chain of command. I'm a proud combat veteran and a service member, and there's nobody who understands the need to have cohesive and to preserve the integrity of the chain of command. But nobody is served when there's lawlessness or recklessness. In fact, it's usually the junior soldiers and sailors and airmen who end up being held accountable and thrown under the bus in those situations, as we are
Yes.
seeing right now, not the people at the top. Let's not forget Abu Ghraib. When that incident in Abu Ghraib happened, 11 junior enlisted actually ended up being criminally prosecuted, not the people at the top, not the commanders of the prison, but the young troops. So we want to continue to stand by our service members.
Well, we now understand why there was such a fierce reaction from the administration on this score. Taking a step back to the operation in general, are you satisfied that we are in an armed conflict, that they have shown that the military is properly being used in a military situation? Or are you concerned that this is simply a criminal justice matter that we are improperly inserting our military to address?
No, the administration has completely failed to justify the basis for their operations in the Caribbean, their legal and constitutional basis for it. This is exactly why the framers of the Constitution put the United States Congress in the position of determining when and how our military would be in armed conflict. Now, the president absolutely has Article 2 authorities to defend the United States, right? That's without dispute. But when you proactively start a conflict or engage in a conflict and make that decision, that is squarely the type of thing that should be debated, that should be discussed, that should be voted on, that should be appropriated, meaning that Congress should be held accountable for the money spent. And then we have to go back to our districts and stand in front of Americans in high school auditoriums, at Rotary clubs, at fish fries, and you name it, and be held accountable for that, right? And to justify why their sons and daughters and their hard-earned money should be paying for it and what it's accomplishing, right? And nobody will ever be able to tell me that if we had actually done that over the 20 plus years of war in Iraq and Afghanistan, that those wars wouldn't have ended sooner and differently than they did. If we had had that accountability, had yearly votes, been accountable yearly for the money spent on it, but we didn't. We gave a blank check to administrations, Republican and Democrat, decades ago, and we've never fully readjusted that. And you see what's once again happening as a consequence of Congress giving up its authority, ceding its constitutional duty to a president.
And in contrast to the Iraq War, which was bad enough, there was at least initial debate about authorization for use of force. There has not been that now. Do you think because of this incident, there will now be a broader conversation and perhaps more support from your Republican friends for pulling back, using the power of the purse, using the War Powers Act? Do you see that on the horizon, or are you pessimistic that that will come about?
Yeah, I'll believe it when I see it. Talk has never been cheaper in this town than it is right now with my Republican colleagues, right? I have been here for almost 7 years now, and frankly, it's been year after year of disappointment. And I hate saying this. I don't relish at all saying this fact because we actually need, two healthy parties and people who are willing to believe in the power of the Congress, not loyalty to any one person or political party or president. That's the only way our system works. And I just have been disappointed year after year by many of my colleagues' inability to follow through and actually fulfill their duty, independent duty as members of Congress, to serve as a check to the presidency, regardless of party, right? And I did it when I was in that position, right? I went to battle with the Biden administration time after time, and I didn't like it. They didn't like it, and they got beat up over it because nobody likes to hear it from their own party. But listen, if it's the right thing to do, it's the right thing to do, right? I beat them up on Afghanistan, which I thought that they botched the withdrawal of Afghanistan. I was critical of the president's campaign and called for him to bow out of it earlier. I was critical of the manner in which they appropriated some of the infrastructure funds and not tying it to regulatory and permitting reform. And we actually saw most of that play out to be true, right? That a lot of that money was never actually spent because it got tied up in regulatory processes and it never got out the door. And of course, the Trump administration has rolled it all back. So we missed opportunities to do really
Right.
important things. So, you know, this is not supposed to be an easy job. And it's not, you're not supposed to be in it to please everybody. You're supposed to look out for your constituents first and foremost. That's actually the job. And you're supposed to discharge your obligations to the Constitution. And
Absolutely.
there are just shockingly too few people who are willing to do those things right now.
Absolutely. You wonder why they take these jobs if they actually don't want to do them. Let me turn to the bipartisan investigation that we've been promised by your Republican colleagues, both in the House and in the Senate. What are the kinds of questions? What do you want to know when presumably you have these hearings and presumably you will get information, logs, videotape, um, communications, classified communications that were undertaken at the time? What do you want to know?
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to know the overall rules of engagement, right? Every unit will be given rules of engagement before combat, before there's actually an engagement, right? No, that's the baseline that guides your actions. And then I want to know what the actual execution orders were. What were the orders? Who gave them? Who approved them at every level of the command? And that's again pre-combat. And then I want to know what actually happened during the action, right? So
Yes.
who was part of the communications chain, who had visibility in the ISR, that's the intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, the drone footage, who was watching, who was listening, and who had the ability to actually be a part of those conversations. So the whole universe of who is synced up. And then I do want to see the transcripts. I'm going to see who was saying what, who gave the order, whether there was a clarification request by the ground unit commander or the air commander in this case to higher ups, and whether there was a second order that was given. I want to know all those things. And I also want to know whether or not there were preparations put in place for POWs or for they wouldn't be POWs because there hasn't been a declaration of war, which brings us back to our initial conversation.
Yes.
But for prisoners to detain folks, whether there was an anticipation of potential detainees and whether they had made preparation to detain and hold people if there were survivors, because that actually goes to mental state, right? And what people were
Yes.
expecting as a possible outcome, and whether or not they then
Absolutely.
short-circuited that process and decided to then kill people who were rendered combat ineffective, which you just look at that second strike, and as somebody who's been in combat and has led soldiers in combat and has been in a position of having to make those decisions, I just see no justification for that second strike. You have people floating in the water, clinging to a burning boat without weapons, that are not combat effective, that are not combatants, that are no threat to the military, and I just see no reason in which that second strike should have occurred.
Well, as you say, one of the oldest tricks in the book is to push responsibility down the line, and it seems that the president and Mr. Hegseth are attempting to do that. I'm confident you guys will get to the bottom of it. Let me switch gears a bit. We have another deadline coming up, and where are we on the healthcare front? The Senate Republicans at least said they would allow a vote, very big of them, but it doesn't seem like they have a plan or even a concept of a plan. What are you hearing from the Senate, and is there going to be a vote of any kind in the House?
Yeah, I don't think there's a plan. If there is, they're certainly not telling members about it. Nor do I think that they're going to resolve this, right? First of all of this is a crisis created in early July when the
Yes.
Republicans crammed through in the middle of the night, bypassing committee, bypassing hearings, bypassing the normal legislative process. They crammed through on July 3rd a bill that removed these subsidies and created this crisis. So they made it. And that's why people's premiums are now doubling, tripling, quadrupling, or in some cases even more in less than 30 days. So that's number one. Number two, why some of my colleagues in the Senate decided to allow the funding to move forward in the bill based on a promise that this would be fixed in December. I mean, really? Come on. Where have you been all year long, right? There's zero data to suggest that they're going to follow through on promises and make this right. None. No reason to believe they were going to do that. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit angry about this, and people should be angry
Okay.
about it, based on a
Yes,
promise, right? Because it was frankly a foolish thing to do. And now
absolutely.
Americans are going to be on the hook, most likely, for these premium increases when, we could have held firm and pushed to stop it. Which
On the
vast
House,
majority of my colleagues did, by the way, which the House did. My colleagues in the House of
yes.
Representatives, Democrats anyhow, did in the House.
There is effort in the House for a discharge petition that would put on the floor a 3-year extension, as I understand it. Are you going to get any help from Republicans, or are they simply going to once again toe the line and show their fidelity to the president rather than their constituents?
I expect there'll be a few kind of swing district Republicans who know that they're going to get hammered on this in the campaign who will join. Whether or not that's going to be enough to get to the discharge petition level, I just don't know. And this goes back to, frankly, just not holding my breath for, my House Republican colleagues to do the right thing, because they have just over and over and over again disappointed me. So I hope that they will, by the way. I'm not trying to be cynical, right? I am obviously
Hard not to be.
I'm a baseline optimist, but I'm also a realist, and I also somebody who learns from history, and I learn from people's conduct. And once people show me who they are, I tend to believe them. So it's never too late to do the right thing, is what I tell folks. And regardless of
Absolutely.
what you've done in the past, and if you've disappointed me, fine. I'm always willing to move forward with somebody to do the right thing, and that door is open for me.
Well, thank you, Congressman. First of all, for your military service. Secondly, for all the work you're doing now and for joining us as well. It's always a pleasure, always an interesting conversation. So thank you. We'll look forward to seeing you again and good luck in getting to the bottom of this. Hopefully, you'll have some help on the other side of the aisle.
Yeah, hopefully, always good to chat with you. Thanks for having me back on.
Absolutely.